While I haven't had any first-hand experience with old-school ARPGs like Diablo 1 or Throne of Darkness, I've recently been interested in the genre's roots with how much I've enjoyed more modern ARPGs like Path of Exile 1 and 2. So when I discovered Tower of Kalemonvo, an indie game inspired by those classics, I decided to check it out. Now, if this is your first time hearing about it, Tower of Kalemonvo is a slower-paced, hardcore isometric RPG where you make your way through randomly generated levels, fighting off cultists and monsters, scavenging for magical loot, and learning powerful spells as you make your way to the top of Kalemonvo's tower. Now, admittedly, given its old-school inspirations, Tower of Kalemonvo, while familiar, still felt very different from the ARPGs I'm used to, specifically due to its slower pace and difficulty. But if I'm being honest, it was those exact differences that made me enjoy the game even more. For starters, I really liked how rather than simply respawning at the latest checkpoint like in PoE 1 and 2, dying in Tower of Kalemonvo will send you back to your last manual or autosave. So if you're not careful, you'll not only lose any progress you've made, but also any XP or items you've collected, which can feel pretty harsh at first. But honestly, I kinda liked it. Now, maybe that's just because I'm a little bit of a masochist, but I really like how the constant threat of dying forces you to slow down and actually think things through. Unless you want to die, you can't just run in without a plan, you've got to be tactical. Whether it's funneling enemies through doorways, using pillars to block incoming projectiles, or taking a moment to restock after each encounter, every decision matters. Not only does it encourage you to match the game's slower, more deliberate rhythm, but it also makes each encounter feel more engaging and dynamic. You can't just press a button and clear the room, you have to approach each fight with care, assessing and adapting to each situation. And for me, that made the combat all the more rewarding. While the tactical side of combat definitely added to the experience, what I really liked was the mechanical side of it. Now, before diving into that, I should mention that for my first playthrough, I mainly did a pure melee run without casting any spells. So everything I'll be talking about from here on out is from that perspective. Alright, with that out of the way, before entering the tower, you'll need to choose a character and 2 starting items. It doesn't really matter what you pick, but I went with Kira and the Bone Wand. After that, you're all set, and the game drops you right into the lower dungeon to begin your climb. Now, early on, combat is pretty straightforward, with each weapon only having a basic attack and the shield a block ability. So if you're using the bow or wand, you'll be cutting enemies and weaving in attacks. Meanwhile, with the sword and shield, you'll be blocking or parrying incoming hits and striking back when there's an opening. Soon enough though, as you make your way through the first few rooms, defeating enemies and getting a feel for your weapons, you'll start earning some XP until you have enough to level up, which is where things start to get a bit more interesting. Upon leveling up, you'll receive 5 skill points which you can spend to increase any of your stats, with each one offering different benefits, like Strength, which increases your damage range for melee weapons, or Constitution, which increases your max HP. Aside from just those benefits though, increasing your strength also allows you to use combat arts, specifically for the two-handed weapons. Not only do these abilities add more depth to the combat, but they also help cover some of the weaknesses of a full melee build. For example, you could use Hurl Weapon to reach enemies from a distance, or Reckless Charge to close the gap, and Mighty Slam for AoE damage. And since you can swap between combat arts using their hotkeys, you can combo them together, which took me longer to figure out than I'd like to admit. Overall, each combat art was not only useful, but fun and satisfying to use, except when I'd lose my weapon because I got caught on a wall after hurling it. Moving on, another thing that I really like about these stats is that there isn't a class system, meaning you have full control over your stat allocation, which makes each point you invest more impactful, especially since you don't actually level up that much. For instance, I only managed to hit level 15 by the time I reached the final boss, and that was with me fully clearing every floor I could find. Now, while you can use your skill points to increase any stats you want, it's often a good idea to save some until you find a powerful item. For example, in my playthrough, I originally planned to do a ranged build, but once I found a pair of gauntlets that doubled my bonus damage from strength, I switched to a full melee run. However, not every item will drastically impact your build, as items come in different rarities and qualities that determine how useful they are. Common items, being the most basic, only offer small stat boosts and don't affect your build too much, while unique items have set effects with different values, meaning some are stronger than others. Rare items, on the other hand, feature random but highly varied modifiers. Some rare items might increase your base stats or provide resistances to damage types like cold or poison, while others grant powerful effects such as leeching HP or MP from enemies. The most powerful items in the game, however, are crafted items. These can only be obtained by sacrificing 3 common or rare items at a golden goblin statue, creating a crafted item with all the modifiers from the sacrificed gear. But if all 3 items are common, then you'll receive a random crafted item instead. Also, it's important to note that there is a limited amount of statues and each of them is a one-time use, so you'll need to carefully consider your choices before crafting. In addition to the rarity and effects though, items can also have special qualities that tweak their base stats. For example, a durable item will have increased armor, an off-balance weapon will have a lower attack rating, and a hardened item will trade dodge chance for more armor. Now, another crucial aspect of the game when it comes to items is inventory management. As you start to allocate points into specific areas, such as dexterity or intelligence, you'll want to try and find items that require those stats rather than having to spend points to equip them. However, you still can't just pick up every item with those stats, as you'll need to prioritize ones that actually help your build, since there are no merchants to sell items to. Otherwise, you'll quickly run out of space for more useful items like potions or cursed skulls, which can be traded for random items, giving you another reason to carefully manage your inventory and ensure you're not wasting space on items that don't fit your build. And before wrapping things up, I just wanted to mention a few other things that really stood out to me during my playthrough. First off, I really liked how important every potion felt. For example, cold blood potions would let me prevent my attack speed from being lowered by cold effects, or how I probably would have burned through twice as many HP and MP potions without items that let me leech them from enemies. Also, having an inventory full of potions for the final boss honestly came in clutch. I also really liked that since the dungeon is randomly generated, no two playthroughs will feel exactly the same, with different layouts, enemy placements, and even bosses. Plus, I liked that as I was climbing the tower, there were often paths that would lead back down into new sections, giving me a chance to farm even more XP and find better gear before pushing further up. Along with that, I really liked how there's a bestiary to see all the enemies you've defeated and their models, as well as additional difficulty options with Despair and Iron Man mode for anyone looking for a more challenging experience. Now, as much as I enjoyed the game, there were definitely a few things I think could have been improved. For starters, I honestly had a hard time figuring out how some of the interactables worked or what they did, like the Enchanter's Lifeblood, which upgrades common items into rare ones, or the Golden Goblin statues. And considering how useful they were, I honestly don't know if I could have beaten the game without looking it up. But that might just be because I'm kind of stupid. Aside from that, I think the game could really benefit from some additional voice acting. It's not necessary by any means, but I really liked what there was, and I think having some more for the NPC dialogue would have been really nice. Lastly, I was originally going to complain about there not being a way to teleport back to the entrance of a level, even though you could teleport to the exit, but literally the day after I beat the game, the dev added it as a feature, so I guess I can't really complain about that. All in all, Tower of Kalemonvo is a fantastic RPG, which I cannot praise enough. From its slower and more tactical combat, impactful loot system, and tough but fair challenge, I honestly had a blast making my way through the tower. So if you're a fan of old school ARPGs, or just looking for a slower and more thoughtful take on the genre, I definitely recommend checking it out on Steam, especially since it only costs $15. But if you're still unsure, there's also a free demo you can try out on both Steam and itch.io. And with that, mateys, is the end of the video. If you made it this far, I just want to say thank you, and I hope you enjoyed the video, and until next time, take care, and I'll see you around, mateys.